This program is brought to you by the Annenberg Foundation, Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Elementary and High School Project for Mathematics and Science.
& Gamble will cut jobs, 13,000
GM
worldwide.
trimmed 60,000 union jobs since the last contract and plans another.
When he said, "You're out," it was like I felt everything wash out of me.
Boeing Corporation announced it'll be eliminating jobs, 27,000 of them nationwide.
I've played by the rules and done everything right, and I'm still unemployed.
Where are you going to go to get another job? Everybody's laying off.
Kodak, the world's biggest producer of photography products, will eliminate 10,000 jobs by
The bad news at IBM is another gigantic charge against earnings to shrink the company.
When you're losing 10,000 jobs over the course of 5 years, we're not talking about a ripple effect anymore. This is tidal wave.
The grim economic news keeps coming. Hundreds of thousands of jobs lost, whole towns devastated. Economists are prone to look at the big picture. They call this the natural shakeout of a bloated, tired economy. They say downsizing, deliberately cutting jobs, is inevitable in an economy that's struggling to revitalize itself. The rest of us look around the neighborhood or in the mirror and see someone who's lost a job and has to start over. Doesn't seem to be any end in sight to the economic turmoil, but there's good news. It is possible to start over. It takes time and hard work, but it can be done.
The Merrill Report, Starting Over, is brought to you by the people of Toyota. Additional funding has been provided by the Ford Foundation, the Pew Charitable Trusts, and Carnegie Corporation of New York.
New Bedford, Massachusetts. On a clear fall afternoon, this harbor city of 100,000 people looks prosperous. On closer examination, however, it's obvious that New Bedford is going through hard times.
You know, as far as jobs, everything's just getting out of here. As far as the taxes, the cost of living, you know, all the companies are getting out of here.
Once the whaling capital of the United States, and as such one of the richest cities in the country, New Bedford has lost 10,000 jobs in just the past 5 years.
The companies involved included Chamberlain Manufacturing finally going down, Goodyear Rubber closing its plant here, Morse Twist Tools, and just dozens of other smaller companies. When you're losing 10,000 jobs over a course of 5 years, we're not talking about a ripple effect anymore. This is tidal wave.
20 major companies have closed their New Bedford plants and factories, leaving 1 of every 5 adults out of work.
I know what it is to lose a job. I know what it is to go to a job and find the door closed, you know, and it is hard, especially if you have a family.
The people in this area are truly loyal, hard-working people, but they're wedded to manufacturing. And they always have been. Their fathers were and their grandfathers were.
And they expected the rules would not change.
The rules were going to be the same.
We had like Chamberlain, that was a nice place to work in. We had Goodyear, that was another nice place to work in. And all these good jobs are just leaving here.
The latest to go is StrideRite, a shoe company, which has been operating in Massachusetts for 75 years.
I've been with the company for 19 years now. And I thought I would retire with the company. But that's the case. I have to look for another job.
In January of 1993, StrideRite announced its plans to close its New Bedford and Roxbury packing and shipping facilities. That meant pink slips for more than 300 employees. You've been here how many years?
5.5 years.
So how much severance pay will you get?
I'll be getting $200 a year.
$200 for each year you've been here. You get $1,000 severance pay.
Yes.
StrideRite is moving its entire operation to a less expensive and more efficient automated facility in Kentucky.
the company, certainly, in order to remain competitive. We had to get some efficiencies in distribution. This facility, or these facilities rather, because we're in 3 separate buildings here, they did not offer those efficiencies.
I was kind of disappointed because that's a good company to work for. I had the chance to go to Kentucky, but I decided to stay around here.
Had this ever happened to you before? A company close out?
Yeah, the company before this one, they closed.
At my age, how can to go and look for another job and to start all over again from bottom up, it's hard. And New Bedford does not offer you many jobs.
We're helping them upgrade their skills, both in education and in English, and helping them market themselves once Stride Rite is no longer in New Bedford.
Help is available here at this transition center in the New Bedford facility. Workers can study for a high school diploma, learn to write a resume, and become familiar with computers. Most of the money to run the center comes from the state, and workers must take classes on their own time. Why is it you're taking this class?
Learn about computers.
What do you hope to get out of it?
Just knowledge about them, just learn how to use them.
We try to go over a lot more than just computer training. We talk about how the work environment is changing.
This is a start.
Well, you're doing some planning here. I mean, this is some sort of preparation for some kind of future.
Well, it's a resume, yeah, and I'm getting used to a computer that I didn't have any knowledge of before. So I'm gaining some type of a skill. Hopefully I'll be able to use it in my next job.
Now all the plants are closing in this part. Now everything's not just factory work. It's going into technology and stuff. So you got to at least keep up with the times, you know.
Everyone is, as they call it, downsizing, becoming lean and mean to be on the marketplace and be affordable. Well, the marketplace, especially in a city like New Bedford where a lot of big companies have left, the marketplace for employees is in a smaller company, under 25 employees, and that the employee needs to be multifaceted, that can do more than just one job.
We have a company here called Satkin Mills. It's owned by a man named Fred Satkin, who saw the future several years ago. He invested in new computer-driven Japanese looms. And unfortunately, even the loom makers in the United States haven't seen the necessity to harness the computer, to turn the computer to work to run the looms that make the cloth. But Fred Satkin saw it.
I was struck when I walked in and saw all those machines and only 5 workers.
Yes.
Is that's the future?
Yes, but don't misunderstand that. It's a value-added product. So my 5 or 6 workers that you saw in the weave room, times 3 shifts, times the auxiliary people, you know, and the administrative offices come out to 32. But
in this building?
In this building. But that goes into a product that needs to be dyed and finished. And in the dye house, you would have another 30 or 40 or 50 people that had to process the fabric. And after the 30 or 40 or 50 people that processed that fabric, it would go to a garment manufacturer. And the garment manufacturer would also be employing a large, fairly, sizable number of people.
He has highly skilled, a small number, but very highly skilled workers. Instead of $7, $8, $9, and $10 an hour stitchers, he has $30, $40, $50 an hour computer experts who know the cloth but also know how to work the computers. There's the future.
As automation occurs, it doesn't reduce jobs, it creates more jobs because you're more efficient and your product therefore has a better value, greater value, and therefore it's more in demand.
Lose Fred Satkin's 32 jobs and you're actually losing hundreds of jobs.
Exactly.
Satkin Mills employees like Manny Escobar make as much as $50,000 a year. You like this job?
I like this. I promised to Fred I'd stay for my life in there.
I learned the first day I was in business that I couldn't be here 24 hours a day, so I needed to rely on people.
Why do you like this?
I don't know, I like staying there.
Why?
Because I like the Fred.
You like the man,
okay. Fred is like my brother.
Computers are clearly, technology, automation, a big part. Are your workers automatons, just doing whatever the computer says?
No. somebody has to understand what the process is. The computer just makes it, the facts and the emotions easier. So what it tends to do is just be a tool. It's not in and of itself an end. The worker is the end.
Skilled laborers?
Skilled labor.
There's a transition taking place that must take place. There are those in the community now who are looking for another factory to come in to employ 2,000 people. It's not going to happen. What will happen, though, and what you will see, I think, in just a few years from now, is a new sense of vibrancy here, new activity, new kinds of activity. But it'll be, as we talked, it'll be in the honeycombing of these incubator, small software companies. One company needs another one, and the vibrancy will return. And those people who are working here are going to need places to eat. They're going to need places to live. They're going to have an entirely new kind of infrastructure that will bring new life to this precious old building.
New Bedford's painful transition will take years, if it occurs at all. Can the city adapt and survive, or will it continue to wither? The outcome may turn on just how responsive the education system is. Correspondent Jed Duval shows us how it can work.
George Lashinsky worked in this large coal mine in western Pennsylvania for 13 years. Then, one day in the winter of 1990,
I went to pick up my pay, and stapled to my pay was a pink slip, and there was a Christmas tree right next to the pay window because we'd picked up our last pay and our pink slip the day before Christmas.
Were you ashamed?
Well, I don't know if I was really ashamed. I mean, you know, I knew I was the breadwinner, and, you know, like I says, I have a wife and 2 kids, and, you know, it's kind of tough. You know, you lose your job, and...
Were you frightened?
Yeah, I was, because, you know, what are you going to do? I mean, the outlook around here isn't that great to start with, job-wise.
For 12 years, Alice Bender made toaster ovens in this factory. In 1988, 2 days after Christmas,
they closed the plant on us.
And you got laid off there?
Yes, I did.
Dwight Eisenhower was president when Daniel Hutchison went to work for Bethlehem Steel. After 34 years, he was laid off.
Well, in plain words, you feel like somebody did you a lot of dirt. It's devastating. And if you let it get to you, it could just ruin the rest of your life, and you could stop living your life in plain words.
That's coal mine number 33. It used to be the number of people worked there was in the thousands. Now it's down in the hundreds. And most people around here assume that this mine, in the manner of so many others around here, sooner or later will close. Not because of the coal, there's plenty of that. It just doesn't pay to dig it. For some people, the layoff comes as a personal disaster. For others, it's an opportunity. A whole new life opens up. George Lashinsky moved from the coal mine to the operating room. Alice Bender went from toaster ovens to the police beat on the Altoona campus of the University of Pennsylvania.
There's one group of 10.
Dan Hutchison moved out of the steel mill to math class on his way to a hospital job. The new life began here on a hilltop in southwestern Pennsylvania at Mount Aloysius College.
For many of these people, the blue-collar jobs that they had, the occupations were very well-paying jobs. And so they enjoyed a high quality of living, high standard of living. Now they're in a situation where they have no income. They've got to learn to start out at the bottom again. They're coming into new professions. They're neophytes in it, and they've got to grow with that. So there's a whole social rediscovery there of someone who had been on the top, who's now starting his way back up, and that's difficult.
It's a real tough adjustment. I mean, it really is.
Why?
Well, for one thing, you know, I was in class. There were quite a few people that were in the class that were, you know, right out of high school. All right, so yeah, well, these younger kids, you know, that are in the class and everything, and well, let's face it, they're right out of school. I mean, these kids are like, you know, top notch. They're coming right out of school, and here I am coming right out of the coal mines.
They're going to run over you.
Right. You know, I don't like to be left by the wayside. I mean, know, like it says, if you're going to start something, you have to start it with the intent on finishing at the top.
But there you are wearing the mortarboard. They didn't run over you, did they?
No, they didn't.
Starting over is difficult, painful. Going back to school can be a huge adjustment.
You pray, you talk to yourself, you talk to your wife, you know, she helps you, you help her. And it's a combination of things. You think a lot about it, and you know, you kick yourself in the butt a few times and say, hey, you have to knock this off and get moving here. You can't just sit around and let things pass you by.
Can everybody do that?
Not everybody can, no. But we need some mechanism to teach people to do that. I'm one of the lucky ones that I've been involved in different programs and stuff where I know those sorts of things, but there are a lot of people around that don't.
My first semester was traumatic, but I graduated with honors.
With honors?
With honors.
In a program that lasted how long?
2 years.
2-year program?
Yes.
And you have a degree in criminology?
I have an associate degree in criminology.
And you have bettered yourself?
I feel I have.
And you're not the same Alice Bender that was in the factory?
No, I'm not. Very definitely not.
If this were an ASCII code, could we read it?
After high school, Stephanie Schultes went to work in a factory sewing cuffs on men's suits. By 1988, she was earning $7.65 an hour. But all the workers knew layoffs were coming.
We heard rumors, and then we started seeing people never coming back to work. And you'd ask where they are, and they'd say, oh, they got laid off. And you thought, oh, my, if there's not that many people putting that product out, that product gets sewn to my half, and then when I get that half, that's my job. So we figured sooner or later, and with me being the youngest, I figured I'd be the first to go.
She was laid off in December of 1988. That meant welfare, but it also meant she could dream of something better.
Well, I could have just sat there and took my medical card and went shopping with my food stamps and paid my bills with my welfare check, but your welfare check only covers your living expenses. And I felt if I was ever going to do anything, I mean, everybody has their dreams, what they want to do with their life. And mine was always to have, I don't want to say material things, but I always wanted to have my, you know, like new furniture, nice clothes for myself and my kids, and just something that makes me feel real good.
Someone coming out of the mines or a factory and going to college and building a new life, it's something like a young bird learning to fly. And in most cases around here, the family, the friends are around, urging them on, applauding, saying, go, go, go. But in some cases, it's the other way. There's fear and resentment, a pulling down on the one who would fly.
They'll do very well for a period of time. And then all of a sudden, you'll notice that they start doing very poorly, academically speaking. And if you're able to get them to open up honestly, you find out that what's happening with them is that they're beginning to lose that support system that they had. The family begins to resent what's going on here at the school. And now they're in a situation that they've got to decide, is my allegiance to learning this new education, this new degree program that I'm in, or is it back with the family? And that conflict ends up in several ways. We've had some people choose to come to college, and it splits the family.
By the time I'd make supper and then get the kids ready for bed and do my homework, there was no time for us. So after like a month of that, he got a little where there's no time for me, you're spending too much time with your books, all this other stuff, and we even separated over that. It wasn't actually over that, but it sort of, everything builds up into where it just boils over. But we talked it out, and he just felt that he was threatened by, you know, me to return to school. He thought I was coming back here to find a better man, not a better life. So we worked it out, and we talked it out, and we're back together now, and he understands, and he's supporting me. In fact, he even makes me do my homework.
Maybe the best way to understand the massive restructuring of the American economy is to see it happening one person at a time.
I had to make a decision. It's either stay on unemployment, go on welfare, or go out and try to find a better job, which there was none in this area, or go to college. And I chose to go to college.
I owe a lot to a lot of people. I owe a lot to Charlene. Because if it wouldn't have been for Charlene, I can honestly say that I'd be down at the bar with my friends drinking because I'd have never went through this.
You wouldn't be able to better yourself without that family support.
No. No, I wouldn't.
When I first started coming back here, I thought, do I want to work? I mean, do I really want to work? My husband works, I could stay home with the kids. But when I worked at continuing education downstairs, I loved it. We did something, you do something new every day, and just the people you meet and talk to, you learn things from. So I knew right then, I like it here.
Would you go back?
To the mines?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I always tell myself, yeah, I would go back to the mines.
1, 2, 3, 4.
But to be honest with you, if the opportunity come up for me to go back, I'd probably turn them down. I mean, I'm set now. I have a good job.
You may have noticed that those 4 success stories had one common element. Each was essentially a 2-step sequence. First, the companies went bust and the jobs disappeared. Then the people went back to school and learned how to start over. Now watch what happens when learning comes first, when learning is part of the job. All 1,500 workers in this Motorola plant in Arlington Heights, Illinois, are required to spend at least 1 week every year going to classes while on the job.
We're going to be working with printed circuit boards, some of us, hundreds of them. And we may be running the same printed circuit boards, but each have their own little characteristics. I want them to examine their work in a more detailed way, to be able to look more closely at what they're working at and working on. And if they can look at their job in a more detailed manner, then they'll probably be able to do that job more effectively.
What we're trying to do is make sure that we have a flexible workforce so that people can go where they're needed, when they're needed, depending on customer demand and customer requirements. And so to do that, people have to work in all different parts of production. And they need to learn all the different jobs in different parts of production.
What you're going to need to be able to do here is be able to learn about discrimination. And basically what I mean by discrimination, I mean by taking 2 objects that are the same and being able to pick one in particular, one out of the bunch.
And the teachers? Who are the teachers?
The teachers come from the business. These are people who work on the education team for a period of 18 months. So it's a temporary assignment. However, during that 18 months, that's all they do. They teach classes.
Basically, what this is going to teach us to do as trainers is pay attention to detail. There will be a cycle, and what will happen is in the end of my term, in 6 more months, I will find another person that will take over my job duties. I will take that person under my wing, and I'll train them. I'll teach them everything that I know. I'll guide them through it, and when they can do it on their own, then I'm going to let them go, and I'll move on to something else.
If there's a job I really want to do, I can go and do it. They will help me get that job if I want it. If I need training, they'll pay for education, say at a college level, or they will send me through classes to better inform me about what I need to know for that job.
That's great for you, but why would that be good business?
Because a happy employee tends to be more productive.
We have 2 classes that are mandatory for everyone, and they really focus not only on job skills, but more so on life skills, and that's team building and problem solving. We want people to be able to communicate with one another and with groups. We want people to be able to not only identify, but solve problems. And so it's for that reason we have those 2 classes as mandatory classes for everyone.
Here we set our own pace. We control the line. If we see a defect or a problem, we stop production and fix the problem right then and there. Gives us more power to control the business.
If I can get 1,000 people to manage my business as opposed to just myself, then the solutions in the business will be much better off. And that's the direction we're headed for.
I think that Motorola's probably learned from the past, as many American companies have, is that if you sacrifice good people and you sacrifice your basic investment, which is your most valuable asset, which is your employees, then what's going to happen is your company will eventually suffer for it.
People are the only precious resource that we have. There is no other resource that is intangible, that is priceless. What we need to do is to get each person within that operation to reach their own potential. I need a workforce that is the most intelligent in the world, and that's the competitive edge that I have.
Investing in employee learning leads to higher morale, greater productivity, and more profit. Unfortunately, few companies seem to have figured this out. This report by the American Management Association indicates that half of businesses surveyed are continuing to downsize. The report indicates that downsizing can lead to a short-term jump in profits, but in the long run, far lower employee morale, lower productivity, and eventually even more downsizing. When we were putting this hour together, we wondered, who's making money in these bad times? Who's benefiting from the misery? Correspondent Jeffrey Kay takes us where the cash registers are ringing.
A sour economy? It's music to the people gathered here. This could be a solemn occasion. Foreclosed properties owned by defunct S&Ls, auctioned off at depressed prices. But no one here's complaining.
975, 1 million now.
Yes,
1 million 25,000. Million 75. We're gonna sell it. 450.
At day's end, the auctioneer earned a cool $1.4 million. Thank you very much. And the buyers? Many are speculators hoping to turn their investments around when and if the economy improves. But while some investors hope to make money in the future, others are reaping profits now. We're in the hills above Hollywood to meet consultant Rick Hoffman. Hoffman says the depressed economy has provided him and his clients a rare opportunity to make money.
We need to get a letter of intent executed within probably the next 3 to 5 days. There are a number of companies that are for sale that are either marginally profitable or are unprofitable due to the economy being down. And because of that, the price that one might be able to acquire those companies is unusually low, sometimes 20 cents on the dollar.
Besides tipping off his clients to bargains, Hoffman makes out in 2 other ways. He advises companies how to restructure, then counsels the executives who get laid off. His fee, $200 to $300 an hour. How busy are you?
We, in fact, are booming. We're having, in fact, difficulty finding high-caliber talent for our own firm, just to keep up the pace.
With all due respect, do you think there's anything that's slightly predatory about what you do?
Yes, as a matter of fact, you know, there are those companies or those individuals who sometimes call people that do position themselves in an economy like this as bottom feeders, quote unquote. And are we in fact bottom feeders? Gee, I don't know. We do try to position ourselves as we do our clients to take advantage of the opportunities that are available in this kind of an economy. And if that makes us, you know, quote unquote bad or predatory, then I guess perhaps we are. But we think it's just a matter of survival.
Layoffs generally mean tough times, but not for those involved in a real growth industry, the burgeoning field known as outplacement.
So the only people that I really gave, depending upon what it was that he was looking for, was a couple of relatives of mine that have their own businesses. So that's what I did. And that's how it goes. That's the power of the networking.
The power of networking was just one of the themes in this 3-day seminar put on by the firm Janata Bray & Associates. Doyle Manning is a company vice president.
Our company is a human resource consulting firm that provides tremendous career transition, or better known as outplacement, assistance to employees of companies.
The direct mail letters, a very small percent.
Diane Ivlev told soon-to-be laid-off employees of U.S. Borax about strategies they might use to find work. Work is not in short supply for the Janata Bray firm.
Started out with 2 gentlemen in 1978. Since that period of time, we've been expanding the company. We have 13 offices across the United States, 3 of them here in the Los Angeles area.
Once, outplacement firms counseled mainly top executives. Now they see larger groups ranging from survivors who feel guilty about not getting the axe to whole departments being eliminated.
In a group situation such as this, we charge by the day, the consultant day.
And so how much would a group situation like
It could range. It's anywhere from I'd say $1,200 to $1,500 again, depending upon the size of the group.
The recession business has a lingo all of its own. Companies bring on productivity consultants who advise them on how to downsize or re-engineer their human resources. They are then provided with career transition or outplacement advice. What this all means essentially is, you're fired. The woman we're about to meet, Joyce Schwartz, has a term she prefers to use to describe what she does: re-careering.
Who's this guy?
That's what we're talking about, packaging yourself so you're recognizable, so all of your skills, so all of your background is recognized out there so that you can make financial gain out of it. And
For $25 a workshop, Schwarz dispenses advice to clients seeking to change their lives.
Now, Richard, you came to this class, and originally when you came to the first of the classes, and you had what? Just been laid off from?
Rodeo Drive as an eyewear image consultant.
And this is going to lead you to?
A TV talk show.
What is Joyce going to be able to do for you that you couldn't do yourself?
She has a positive approach to it, and that's that positive that's going to ignite my fire so I can pursue what I'm out there to do.
In the process of igniting fires under her clients, Schwarz has created her own career. But as job seekers are finding, these days more businesses than ever are hiring temporary workers. That's good news for the temp industry. The Apple One agency says this year profits are up 20%. Cora Kalanya manages one of the firm's 80 offices.
No, Deborah's at the payroll desk.
So you're busy.
Very busy.
That's good, huh?
Very busy, yes. It's very good.
So a lot of people are using temporary workers, I guess.
Absolutely.
Why?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple of different reasons. Because of a lot of the layoffs that have occurred, basically people are short-staffed now, and they're not quite sure whether they have enough work for full-time employees, so what they're doing is they're bringing temporary employees in until they know and they feel more comfortable about the workload.
What's this meant for your business? I hear the phones ringing all over the place.
It's meant great things for us. I mean, especially in the last, I'd say, 6 to 8 months. I've been in the industry 8 years, and I've never seen it really happen like it's happening today.
But some hopeful job seekers don't have the skills required by the new technology.
When Apple One couldn't find enough qualified people to fill temp jobs, it saw another business opportunity, starting up computer training schools.
We teach all IBM and Macintosh applications.
Students pay $590 for a 40-hour course. If Apple One then finds them work, the agency promises to reimburse part or all of their tuition, according to Pat Shapiro, director of the firm's 3 schools.
It was a win-win situation.
Particularly win-win
for us,
for your school, and for Apple One.
Right.
Some laid-off workers are starting their own businesses. At the Rhodium open-air market in the South LA community of Torrance, 3,000 vendors a week set up shop. Clothing stall owner Vic Sethi was laid off from an office equipment firm.
I was a corporate America man, and I started with a low capital, and I'm growing slowly and gradually. You know. So I'm satisfied with my 6-month progress.
So what's happened to this business, the Rhodium, over the last 5 years?
We kind of move against the economy, if you will.
Manager John Shane says vendors rent their spaces for between $13 and $41 a day.
Offering very inexpensive products because our sellers really don't have much of an overhead. So we've 2 things happen out of that. Our shoppers, of course, get good bargains shopping here and for everything from their household goods to their business needs. Probably more importantly in today's economy, we have a whole lot of people sell here for a living.
One constant in economic downtimes is pawnbroking. Pawnbrokers have mixed reputations, but Sam Gonan says he's providing a valuable service.
The most I can give you would be $150.
Gonan says pawnbrokers are a barometer of economic conditions.
People borrowing a lot of money from us. Yes, there's new people that never been, quote, in this situation who needs money from us. People who got rejected from the bank, people overuse their visa.
One of Gonan's 3 LA area pawn shops is housed in what used to be a bank before it went bust. Gonan gloats over his institution's relative stability.
You know, we're feeling a vacuum since banking abandoned quite a lot of society.
Gonan charges 17.5% interest on a 4-month loan, much higher than bank rates. But he says that's a good deal for customers. If they don't pay, Gonan, unlike banks, will take their collateral, not their credit rating.
If you default on a loan, I'll shake your hand and say, come back again. I wasn't injured. Why should I call your names and ruin your reputation?
And that's what a bank does.
Other institutions will will repo your car and also advertise to the world that you're a bad guy and your credit is gone. And now you really lost major assets that you had before.
While pawnbrokers take in cameras and cars for collateral, mortgage loan companies lend on clients' primary assets, their homes. Gary Judas, CEO of Ames Home Loans, now occupies the penthouse office that once belonged to a prominent savings and loan tycoon.
I remember coming up to this floor and looking out at the city and fantasizing as a young guy, boy, this must really be neat, you know. I mean, he must really feel like he's on top of the world. What a wonderful feeling of accomplishment.
Judas has gotten to the top by lending money to people whom banks won't take risks on.
A much greater number of unemployed people, no question about that, particularly in the southern part of the state, more so than in the north, but no question about it. And frankly, people with more impaired credit than we've had before.
How much do you need?
In the phone room, brokers field calls that come in on 800 numbers.
And you're looking for approximately $30,000?
150 or 200 or...
The demise of so many SNLs has created brisk business for Ames. Company revenues, $21.5 million in 1992, nearly doubled in the past 4 years.
The last time I talked to her was the time I talked to you to inform you, the loan was still in foreclosure.
For many, economic misfortune leads to bankruptcy. Southern California is the bankruptcy capital of the nation. 93,000 cases were filed in Los Angeles last year. That means a lot of work for, you guessed it, bankruptcy attorneys.
Hi.
Legal assistant Ron Nell says he's swamped with cases.
For example, there can be a time period, and generally it can be even almost seasonal, time around taxes, the time after the Christmas holidays when people have run their credit cards into the ground, and then the bills start calling, collection agent starts calling. It's their moment of panic.
The firm charges $175 to file papers, $600 to have a lawyer appear in court, even though you don't have to retain an attorney to file bankruptcy.
The economy has been good for business, but unfortunately that is, if you want to do that, you can examine the entire legal profession and ask why is there a need for a lawyer anyway? And I'm sure you'll get a lot of debate on that one.
What I'm going to do here is just cross-multiply.
High school math teacher Kevin Acker, his students, and the LA school district have also benefited from the recession.
I found myself out of work for a long period of time, close to a year, working different odd jobs.
Finding itself desperately short of teachers, the school district issued 900 emergency credentials. About 30% of the rookies, including Acker, a former insurance salesman, had been laid off from other jobs.
Is this a good deal for you? I think so. You're talking about a guy who's been here for less than a month, and that's about the threshold point on a new teacher. Either I'll weather the storm in a couple of months, or we'll see what happens. I think I can handle this.
If starting over were an athletic contest, we'd tell you the playing field's not level. If this were a card game, we'd warn you the deck is stacked. It's true. Hourly wage employees get a pink slip and not much else. But if you're in middle and upper management making top dollar, you're likely to get a generous severance package and substantial help in finding a new job. But still, starting over is a test of character no matter how much money you're making. And it always starts the same way, with some variation on "you're fired."
When I looked in the mirror, I said, I'm Serena Butler. I never expected to get fired, but I got fired. I've always thought I was kind of a special person, and it's very clear that I'm not.
I'm out of a job. I've been fired. And it was a terrible feeling. It was a terrible feeling because I had never known in all of my career, I'd never known a day where I wasn't employed making a paycheck.
Serena Butler and Jim Rippon were well up in the ranks of middle management, making over $150,000 a year when the axe fell.
My boss gave me a call and said, "Hey, Jim, I'm coming through Chicago. I'd like to meet you at the airport." I said, "Fine, George, what would you like to speak about?" He said, "Well, the normal things." And so I put my project files together and I carted myself out to Chicago, O'Hare. And what was unusual is that he had set up a suite at a hotel very close to the airport, which is a little unusual. So you get that, what's going on type of feeling.
I was called in on a Thursday morning and invited to a meeting at 10:30.
George comes in, I had my files. I said, "George, wait till I tell you about this interesting stuff." And he said, "Jim, I'm not here to talk any of those things. I said, well, what are you here to do? And he said, I'm here to make a change in Chicago. What's the change? He said, you're out. And that was the biggest shock of my life. I said, I'm out? He said, you're out. You no longer fit.
My boss basically said to me, I've examined this very seriously, and there's not a place for you on our team. And that was it. It was a very dispassionate conversation, and it was clearly something that, he was prepared to do. Might have even enjoyed, for all I know.
Did they say, clear out your desk and be gone?
He told me that I needed to leave at the end of the day.
When he said, you're out, it was like I felt everything wash out of me. I just felt literally like my whole world had just collapsed. And I'm sitting there. And of course, being a professional, you don't show any of that. But I did feel that way. I just felt like everything that I was just melted into a pool of liquid. And then it was just a matter of scrambling mentally to try to put back together what it had taken me 15 years in my mind to build. Because when you focus as much energy on a career as I have, you build your self-image largely on the success that you've had in business. This was clearly the first time I had ever experienced a failure of this magnitude. I'd never been fired in my life. And believe me, it was crushing. It was a crushing feeling.
You have to understand, I didn't have any experience at being fired. I'd never been fired. In fact, I didn't have any experience at rejection. I think successful people don't have a lot of practice with rejection. And as a result, it makes that kind of rejection or the firing especially difficult, because you begin to think about, what's wrong with me? What could I have done differently? What can I do differently even now? The thought goes through your mind, should I beg them for my job back? Will they consider, giving me something else? And immediately your standards start to slip, and you say, oh my God, what if I asked them for a job that actually paid less and was less responsible, and maybe they'd keep me on? But I think your better judgment comes into play.
The shock of getting fired was cushioned somewhat by generous severance packages and by the fact that both have working spouses.
Hello.
In addition, Butler and Rippon were offered advice and counseling to help them find new jobs. Butler declined the offer.
The psychological environment of at least the outplacement firm I was with was so undesirable to me that I just couldn't stay there. I found that, the outplacement firm, of course, is full of people who've lost their jobs. That's the one place you don't need to be when you've just lost your job. It's a very depressing environment.
My first day when I walked around the office and I met all of these other unemployed people, it could be depressing. And the key is to capitalize on each one of their networks. Because if you meet 20 people and they all know 20 people, all of a sudden you know 400 people, or at least you have 400 people on your to-do list to call.
Looking for a job was my full-time job. And I went to work every day at the usual time. I worked a minimum of 8 hours, sometimes longer. And I went home, and the next day I went back. And it was really what I concentrated on.
You cannot allow yourself to indulge in self-pity. And I've seen people that do indulge in self-pity, and they go into troughs that could take them a week or 2 weeks to get out of. The key is to catch yourself as there are times in a process, in this whole search process, where you're inclined to feel depressed. You get a rejection. You don't have anything on the back burner that you can stoke up the fire and then go after. You have lulls of activity. Those are the times when you're most apt to feel depressed. And what has to happen during those times to keep you from becoming depressed is you must take action. You have to be very focused on what you want to achieve and go after it, and not allow those thoughts to creep into the forefront.
Serena Butler is earning more money at her new job, Director of Community Relations at Montgomery Ward. Jim Rippon also has a better job. He's a vice president of the Hysan Corporation, but both worry.
The leadership of businesses always survive because they're in control. The people who are doing the online work have to survive because otherwise there's no product to sell. The people in the middle who are adding value to that product don't always survive. That's where I think an awful lot of the changes that we're seeing are really being felt.
I went to a networking meeting and I met over 200 senior level executives, VPs, executive VPs, presidents, and CEOs who were unemployed. And this was just on the north shore of Chicago, 200 and maybe 50 or 60 of them. This was in one meeting. That's when I really knew how widespread this is. This is an epidemic. And I don't think people know about it because no one talks about it.
With your old employer, you trusted, you were loyal. How about now? Can you trust again?
I think I've grown out of a stage of what I would call fairly naive trust. Yes, you trust. You trust that the goals of the business are good, and so long as you can support them, you've got a chance at surviving in that business. But you don't trust in a what I would call a childish way, a naive way. You'll never do that again.
In the first 2 weeks with this new company, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop because I couldn't believe it was such a terrific match. And I just had that skepticism that I think 9 months of going through process gives you. About the third week, and then certainly the fourth, it was gone. The skepticism was gone. However, the education stays with me. The education says there's no such thing in business today as job security.
But now, I mean, do you keep your resume polished? Do you spend 20% of your time thinking about your next job?
I spend no percent of my time thinking about my next job. But I'll tell you one thing, you'll never catch me without an up-to-date resume again.
We've just spent some time with people who are making $150,000, $120,000, $180,000 a year, and they got fired. And they received this elaborate outplacement service plus generous severance. Now, I have the feeling that you two did not receive these things. I wonder how does it make you feel?
I'm a little angry that there was nothing, I wasn't even pointed in any direction, even if the company that I was with didn't purchase an outplacement service or didn't purchase that sort of service for us. They didn't even give us any sort of, at least I wasn't given any suggestions.
And these people got a year's severance, cushion. You get 2 months.
That was, and the only direction I was given was towards the elevator.
Barb Withers, Bridget Hanrahan, Mike McCaskey, and Stacy Saxon have all been laid off.
I mean, I think it's a very painful process for the mass of people in this country. The golden parachutes are for the managers and executives. They're not for the rest of the population. And yet those are the people often with the least skills and the least education and the most in need of help and assistance. And yet they get the least from the places they work.
Well, the financial aspect is frightening. You know that there's a hard and fast date when that severance is going to run out. And I've worked with a lot of deadlines before in my life, but never one like this.
The need for security is one of the most fundamental needs we all have, and that need is being undermined in these very dynamic and rapidly changing times.
What's your mental state? Bridget?
Yeah, shock, I think, pretty much covers it. You know, you think it's something that always happens to someone else and you never think will happen to you, and then when it does, you're just kind of bulldozed almost and don't quite know what to do first.
I think there's often a numbness that sets in. A feeling of this can't be happening to me, a feeling of sometimes anger and resentment, a lot of initial almost sort of knee-jerk reactions. But I have found in my experience that one of the most consistent ones is disbelief.
Tuesday morning, it's, you know, I woke up and it was 8 o'clock and I was like, what am I going to do today? I've got, you know, 15 hours to fill or something before I can go back to sleep. What am I going to do?
What do I do when I wake up in the morning and there is no one to talk to? And I'm so used to, it's so built in. You know, you ride the L, there's people. You go to work, there's people. You get off, you go back on the L, there's people. And then by the time you get home, you're tired of talking to people and you're fine, it's 8 o'clock at night and you don't want to worry about it. And when you're unemployed, you have these empty hours where there's no contact unless you make it happen.
It's that vulnerability that one feels when one doesn't have the control and in fact is having to admit at some level that I am being changed by something rather than I am going to change something.
What's the unhealthy response then to being fired, let go, downsized?
I think the unhealthy response, if you're meaning mental health and personal health, is prolongated despair and what we perceive as depression.
I have to deal with me on a 24-hour-a-day basis, and it's still hard to you know, wake up in the morning, it's me that has to wake up and say, well, I have absolutely nothing contributory that I have to do today. You know, I've nowhere that I have to be. That's me that has to say, okay, well, so let's go do something.
They have to look at the looking for a job as their work. So give it the same kind of 40-hour-a-week effort as their job did, because it's a job. And that's the way we often talk to people who suddenly find themselves in that kind of a crisis. So there are routines to jobs. There's a time you get up, you get ready, you get moving. You got to do the same thing when you're looking for a job. And that helps people get over the my days are empty feeling.
What do you do with your fear? Maybe you can give some advice to these two women.
Sometimes I scream. And one thing I do, exercise. When I swim a mile, everything's gone.
I'm working with a group of people who are in transition, and some are in transition just for short periods of time, and others have been involved in a search for themselves and for their next jobs for a considerable length of time, a year or more. And I asked the group, hey, what are you doing to stay afloat? What are you doing to keep yourself up and buoyed in this tough time? And here are just some of the things that they shared with me. They said, share the problem. Share it. Don't keep it cooped up inside. Talk to people, and you'll see that same thing coming up down here. Staying connected. Connect with other people.
One thing that keeps me going is there are a number of us out here, and there are a number of groups who meet. You know, there's breakfast clubs, there's lunch clubs that you can get involved with.
So, somebody said, it's a good time for planning. Establish priorities, set goals, keep going. And they were talking about not only relative to their job searches, but in terms of how they actually conduct their lives day to day during the transition phase.
Of course, you have this freedom right now to reassess everything that you have done and look at your life, and even take some time to enjoy it, which I have done, taken a lot of chores that I've been neglecting for years and years and got them out of the way. But when you start worrying about the money, and then there's a little insecurity, you're out of that corporate womb, and but it's also a time of opportunity.
Use this time to the extent that it's possible to explore a range of opportunity, to maybe get in touch with those deeper or more obscure ideas that maybe you would have been in other market conditions inclined to put off, and follow the dream.
I still feel, as I felt the day that I found out my job was eliminated, I saw it as an opportunity because I did want to do something different. I did want out. And this is my opportunity to do something different.
They gave you an escape hatch by basically kicking you out.
Well, if you want to look at it that way.
Give me some advice. I have a job. Should I be looking for a new job? Should I just do everything I can to hang on to my job?
If you've got a job now, what I would say to you is be thinking about constantly working on your skills and knowledge so that you are employable somewhere, anywhere, anytime. And then I would suggest that you stay in the job you're in, but you start to grow and explore and learn things that are going to be useful to you both inside if you stay and outside if you leave.
Serena Butler's Rules for Survival. Well, the first thing is there's a lot more to your life than your job. You have to put your job in context. Secondly, you're pretty good, and you need to understand that. You are a whole person with a lot of talents who can contribute to the next place you're going to work and who will enjoy where you're going to work and what you're going to be doing. Very, very important. And finally, I think it's don't let these, I won't use the word, strange people get you down.
You can share your vision, you can share your objectives, but rarely in a situation like this would you think of sharing your feelings, but that's part of this whole process, is you have to deal with your feelings.
So you're a different guy.
I'm a different person, much better. My wife even says I'm much improved now.
Don't make work your whole life, and I am also saying be always in the process of planning, always in the process of defining your alternatives and your options.
So give your employer 100%, but save another 20% for yourself.
But keep 20% out. That's exactly what I'm saying.
What are the lessons? Well, first and most important, starting over is possible. Don't let grim economic news obscure the fact that people are emerging from difficult times with greater strength and deeper understanding. You may have wondered at some point during this hour, what can I do to avoid having to start over? The people we've talked with say that's the wrong question. Better to figure out what you can do to keep on growing, keep on learning in your job and in your life.
Production of South Carolina ETV and ACSN. To learn more about this program, visit us at PBS Online at the internet address on your screen.